Hey everyone, welcome back to Bagel TCG. Today we're going to be going over the set review. We're going to look at different cards for limited and talk about what archetypes you could play at pre-release, in sealed, and in draft. What cards I think are strong and the different strengths and weaknesses of each hero. I just got back from the world premiere in Prague as well as the calling. I was able to do pretty well in sealed. I went 7-1 day one. Didn't manage to get there in draft, but yeah, draft I think is a lot harder of a format to learn. But still had a really great time. One of my teammates from Team Mitrud made it to top four of the calling, which is great. So shout out David and shout out everyone there. It was really fun to play everyone. Um, let's get into the different archetypes and what you can expect to play in the format. So, of course, there are three heroes that you can play as in the limited set. The first one is our Chaos Assassin hero here, Arachne Web of Deceit. He is I'll say, somewhat aggressive hero, mixed with disruptive elements. He cares the most about marking your opponent because his hero ability is so strong when they're marked. Your attacks with stealth get +1 while your opponent's marked, and they also get when this hits, this gets go again. So, pretty huge benefit from having your opponent marked. Yeah, go again and +1 is very strong to get essentially for free if you can mark them without much downside. You also get to flip into an Agent of Chaos at the end of turn if your opponent is still marked. And the Agent of Chaos aren't always good, but most of them are quite strong and you'll be happy to hit them. Um, yeah, they're usually a plus, but sometimes you'll feel a little unlucky. Typically, it's good to get into them. The token weapon is Mark of the Huntsman. This dagger, like most daggers, costs 2 to attack with go again. If your opponent is marked, or if it's attacking a marked hero, I should say, this gets +1. Already quite strong. 2 for 2 with go again is not bad, so it's usually nice to attack with this when your opponent is marked. Especially when they're lower in life total, they're going to want to block this, and then you get to keep them marked too, which is nice since it didn't hit. You do want this to hit. Getting your opponent marked is quite nice, so when it hits a hero, you can choose to destroy this and mark them. Uh, Usually, you're quite happy to do it the first time if you have something useful that cares about your opponent being marked that you can play right after. You don't want to destroy it willy nilly, but it is nice to destroy the first one so you can get the upgraded token weapon, which I think should be right here for some reason. This you can only equip through special ways. There's a few cards that can get it, and one of the 6 Agents of Chaos that can get it. This is really strong. Not only does it only cost 1 to attack with, unlike 2, like most daggers, it gets go again if it's attacking a marked hero, and most importantly, it has stealth. There's a lot of cards that can target things with stealth. They obviously don't normally work on daggers. There's no other assassin daggers that have stealth, but this one does. So anything that cares about targeting something with stealth, that is actually not a good example. That's not a good example either. I'm trying to think of find one that cares about it. Here we go. Target attack with stealth gets +3 and go again. Right, so typically this will never work on a dagger, but once you get that bonus token dagger, then you can play this attack reaction on it. And there's a few others that you can find as well in the set. Now, this seems already, you can kind of tell, a little aggressive, right? Because you're getting go again a lot, you're getting +1. I would not say the format is really a fatigue format at the moment. At first, I thought maybe you would want to play the assassin a bit fatigue, but I do think maybe sometimes games can go to fatigue when there's just a lot of blocking, but I think that's often more an accident than intentional. I think the best versions of Arachne have a lot of the powerful stealth cards that you can loop with marking. So let's first look at the commons, because I think that's what you're going to see the most of, and talk about the really strong ones. Mark the Prey is probably my favorite stealth attack at red. You basically only want the reds for the stealth attacks. Of course, you'll take the yellows and blues as pitch cards and to block with, but when we're talking about the premium cards for the deck, it's going to be the red ones because when you're attacking the opponent marked, they'll be for 4. So a really nice break point that's hard for them to deal with. Um, this one has stealth, and when this hits a hero, mark them. Pretty basic, but it lets you basically loop the mark. So this will attack for 4, hit them with go again if the opponent's already marked. Then it will reapply the mark, so then you can play another stealth for 4. So getting quite a lot of value off that mark. Plunge the Prospect is also quite good. When this is attacking, marked hero gets +1. So if the opponent's marked, this is a 0 for 5 with the base hero with go again. So 0 for 5 go again is really strong. Other than that, Mark of the Black Widow is obviously amazing. When it hits a marked hero, they banish a card from their hand. Those are almost certainly the 3 strongest common stealth cards you can find. Uh, I'll touch a little bit on the other ones. Reaper's Call doesn't really do anything in terms of offensive gameplay. You can, as an instant, discard it to mark the opposing hero. You'll just kind of pick up, I think the yellow and blues are a bit better, but it's nice to instant speed discard it, and then you can, if they're blocking for 3, turn one of your 3s into a 4 and get it through. So the instant speed discard to mark is nice, but I don't think the red is really what you care about. You'll just grab whatever. Scuttle the Canal is a bit silly. It says when this attacks a marked hero, it gets go again, but it's already going to have a go again on hit. It's fine to play once again, but it's not absurdly strong. Mark of the Funnel Web is much weaker than the other mark because a lot of the time your opponent's not going to have an arsenal, and so then this becomes a pretty blank card. Sometimes it's really nice if you can line it up when they have an arsenal. Obviously, it's quite strong, but I wouldn't prioritize it as much as Mark of the Black Widow. And if you find Defang the Dragon or Extinguish the Flames, these are obviously great as well, but only into specific heroes. Backstab is kind of whatever. It's going to be blank most of the time. For other commons, let's look at the rare stealths first, actually. There's 2 other rare stealths. Bite, which is quite nice. When it attacks, you can have a dagger deal 1 damage to the opponent. So you can throw your marking dagger and then turn this right away into a 4 with an on-hit go again. And then Whittle the Bone is probably the best stealth because when it attacks a marked hero, you get to equip that strong token dagger. You really want to have 1 or 2 ways to get that dagger in your deck, so you'll find it every game. But the only ways to do it are these 2 rare cards, Whittle from Bone and Orb Weaver Spinneret. This one will just equip it right away and then give your next stealth +3 for the red with go again. They're both 3 blocks as well, so I'd prioritize getting one of these if you can, and if you open one, especially the red and sealed, that's maybe a good reason to start looking at your Arachne pool. Otherwise, it is a pretty aggressive deck, so you're going to want the reds of stuff when you can. Stains of the Red back is great. It's often going to be a 0 for +3 and go again on a stealth. The go again's often not relevant because when you hit, the card will get go again if they're marked. But sometimes it can be nice to get the go again. Mostly it's just a 0 for +3. That goes along with Razor's Edge, which is also great, giving a stealth +3. 2 sides to the blade is probably the best reaction in the deck because it gives a stealth +3, but it also gives it when this hits a hero, mark them. So it essentially turns any stealth into a mark the prey. Only costing 1, of course, you do have to pitch for it, but if you pitch a blue, you can still dagger after, for example. And then all of the traps are really good. So Hunted or Hunter, this is a great D-React. And then there's also 2 hybrid ones, which I assume are further down here somewhere. Yeah, Layer of the Spire is great to mark, and Den of the Spider is also great. Yeah, I would pick up basically as many of the 3 block D-Reacts as you can. I think those are going to be pretty key to your gameplay. Most of your Arachne gameplay is going to be throwing red stealth cards with nice on-hits while your opponent is marked, and then backing that up with some good blocking. You have a lot of 3 blocks, and throwing your dagger in there occasionally as well. And I think you'll get there a lot of the time. You'll be surprised at just how much damage you can do when you're coming in with 4 into 4 every turn, backed up by buffs and +3 attack reactions, while blocking quite well on your opponent's turn with 3 blocks and defense reactions. The gameplay ends up working out quite well. There's also some good hybrid cards to look at. For example, Up Sticks and Run and Pick Up the Points lets you retrieve your dagger, which is a new keyword. You can pay 1 to re-equip it. There's also some nice dagger buffs that can mark your opponent. For example, Scar Tissue is great, giving your dagger +3, and when it hits mark, you really want as many efficient ways to mark as possible. So basically any red card that can mark and also get +3 somewhere else is really nice. So Scar Tissue is phenomenal, as well as, where is it down here? Public Bounty is really, really great. 1 cost for marking your opponent, and then giving your next attack +3. Phenomenal card for Arachne as well. So anything that marks efficiently at a good rate at red, is going to be something Arachne wants because you get so much benefit from having your opponent marked. He certainly cares about it the most. So that was about 10 minutes of discussing Arachne. Hopefully I can keep the other heroes to that as well. But yeah, play him a bit more aggressive, but get those 3 blocks in there, and so you can choose when you want to block a bit and when you want to get some aggressive attacking in. You might end up fatiguing, but I think a lot of times you're just going to kill your opponent with 1 or 2 attack reactions on top of a dagger or something else. Next up, we have Cindra. Cindra will have these 2 daggers, these kunais of retribution. They attack for 1, they cost 1, and they can attack with go again, but when the combat chain closes, they get destroyed, but she can get them back with her hero ability. By paying 3 resources, she can equip 2 daggers from her graveyard, and it does cost 1 less for each draconic chain link. So you can make this end up costing 0 if you have 3 draconic chain links. Both draconic heroes in the set also have this first ability. When you hit a marked hero, create a fealty token. Cindra is certainly happy to get fealty tokens, and they can have some big benefits for her, but I do think she cares the least out of all 3 heroes about marking the opponent. It's like I said, if you can do it for free, essentially, like if it's just part of the card, there's no complaints there, and usually you'll be happy to do it, but you don't need to do it that much in a game. Cindra, I think, is going to care a lot about flicking her daggers, so wanting to throw them at the opponent. You want to start every turn with at least 1 dagger, so I would not end the turn if you can help it with both in your graveyard. You want to be able to start most chain links with 1. You're going to have a lot of cards, for example, like Hot on Their Heels. This is if you control 2 or more draconic chain links, this gets go again, and when this hits your hero, mark them. So this really wants to be at least the second one, because it will count itself. So you need another draconic chain link right before it. Most often that will be 1 of your kunais. So most turns you're going to want to pitch a blue, attack with kunai for 1, and then attack with one of the many cards. Lava Vein Loyalty, control 2 or more. Mark with Magma, control 2 or more. Cinderskin Devotion, control 2 or more. You can see like half of her card pool wants to be the second draconic attack. And so you really want to have always a kunai of retribution to start your turn off with. You don't need both equipped, you just need at least 1 ready to go. I would try to get to 3 draconic chain links every turn, and then you can use her ability to re-equip the other dagger, right? So you'll attack 3 or 4 times, starting with your dagger, use her ability for free, grab the other dagger, and when the chain closes, you'll lose the one that's on the combat chain. So you're kind of swapping 1 dagger every turn. Some turns, there's exceptions to this, where you might want to attack with both for a big setup turn. For example, Blood Runs Deep, this is just a Majestic, for example, but when it attacks, each dagger you control deals 1 damage to the opponent. So usually you'll want to go dagger, Blood Runs Deep, so that you'll get to attack with both daggers and then throw them both off the combat chain. So there are exceptions when you'll want to set up. Also her legendary rare, and there's some other cards where maybe you'll want to have a bit of a weaker turn the turn before, maybe not attack with the dagger and get both daggers back. But on your average turn, you're just going to attack with 1 dagger and swap them out. Looking at her cards, they're mostly just like default Draconic Ninja cards. They're 1 for 4 go again, 0 for 3 go again, 0 for 3, 1 for 4, 1 for 4, 0 for 3, 0 for 3. Yeah, most of her cards are just 0 for 3 go agains or 1 for 4 go agains. Not too much to say there. You're going to want to grab them when you can. They're all quite good. You'll probably play basically all of them because they're just good rates. Cards that I don't love, I think Blood Drop is quite bad. I mean, at the very best, it's a 0 for 2 go again. Same with Bloodline. This one at best is 0 for 3 go again, so it's not bad. But a lot of times, it's going to be your second chain link, so you'll have to pay 1 for it. And then it's a 1 for 3 go again. So I would avoid Blood Drop and Bloodline unless you really need the extra cards. Her rares are both great. Demonstrate Devotion and Display Loyalty both make a fealty when they're your second attack after your second Draconic chain link, I should say. Getting a free fealty is really strong. You have quite a few cards that really want to be turned Draconic. Mostly your rares want to be turned Draconic. The 3 biggest ones are Art of the Dragon Fire. This is maybe the strongest one. It says when this attacks, if it's Draconic, deal 2 damage to any target. So this is a 1 for 7. Dragon Power is also great. It's 1 for 4, but if it's Draconic, it gets +3. So 1 for 7 as well. A little weaker because at the base it's only 4, and set all 7 of it is blockable. So Art of the Dragon Fire is definitely better. And then Silver Talons is really good as well. When this attacks a hero, if it's Draconic, you can have a dagger you control deal 1 damage to them. So it's a 0 for 5. When you can flick your daggers off the combat chain, that's also how you can start your next turn with 2. So if you attack with the dagger first, you do your turn, you end it with Silver Talons, because this doesn't have go again, using your fealty. You can throw the dagger that's currently on the combat chain, so now both of your daggers will be in your graveyard, and then you can use your heal ability to re-equip both of them at the same time. So that's kind of your best way to start your turn with both daggers. So maybe you want to do a smaller turn, just 1 dagger, an attack or 2, and Silver Talons, Arsenal to set up for a big turn and start with both daggers. That's really what you want to use your flicks for. Some of her base ninja cards are pretty strong as well. Fire Tenant Strike First gives your next Draconic attack +1, so it's basically a 0 for 4 go again. Grow Claws, if Draconic attack was the last one, it gets +1, so it's a 1 for 5 go again, both really insane rates. These other cards are just okay. Grow Wings is just a 0 for 3 go again. If there was a Draconic attack before it, that's fine. The main thing is that it 3 blocks, but yeah, this is kind of a whatever card. Tag the Target and Trap and Release are both okay because they can mark your opponent when you hit with them, but they're not Draconic, which is a pretty big downside for her because she really wants to attack with at least her dagger and then 2 other Draconic attacks every turn. That's pretty important to Cindra to attack with 3 Draconic attacks every turn if she can. I think the main game plan with Cindra is going to be the on-off turn cycle for the most part. So what I was talking about, where you're going to want to have some weaker turns where you just attack with a few attacks, arsenal, and then set up for a much bigger turn with a 5-card hand. 5-card meaning your 4 cards in hand plus your arsenal. I think in the experience with her, if you're just throwing damage every turn, 4 cards into 4 cards into 4 cards, you're just going to get outvalued by your opponent. She has one of the weaker value game plans out of the other heroes. Just comparing, like this is 1 for 4 go again, and with just no on hit, this is a pretty decent card for her. But Arachne gets all his stealths as 0 for 4 go again with on hits. So his cards are basically all better than this, and 3 block, like all his red stealths. So you need to find a way to break that a little bit. The rares that we spoke about, Art of the Dragon Fire, Dragon Power, and Silver Talons are your 3 best ways to get more value than that. And so you really want to get those. Those are probably the best reason to go into the deck, outside of course, some good Majestics. The other thing that you can do is set up for those big 5-card hands with some poison attacks. Let's see, Poisoned Blade. This is probably your biggest go wide card. When you attack with this, for the rest of your turn, your daggers deal an extra damage when they hit. So if you can do 1 or even 2 Poisoned Blade attacks in a row, and then you can do a bigger turn, especially turns where you flick daggers, those daggers will all make your opponent lose extra life. So if you attack for 1 with a dagger and your opponent can't block it for some reason, they'll take 2 damage instead. If you can then throw the dagger, for example, with throw yourself at them, they'll take 2 damage when it hits them with the throw the dagger. So Poison Blade is your kind of big combo card. And then you want all the flick effects you can get reasonably, like throw yourself at them and Silver Talons that we saw above, to be able to set up for those bigger hands with all your daggers. Outside of that, retrieve cards are okay in Cindra. They're not amazing. The main advantage is that they can once again help you potentially end the turn with both daggers. Yeah, there's not a lot else to say. The generics for her are just kind of okay. I think she is maybe the weakest hero on the floor. You have to get some really strong cards for her, like Poison Blade and some flick effects. You can open a pool that ends up looking nice, where it's just a bunch of like Phi style cards, just 1 for 4, 0 for 3, 1 for 4, 0 for 3. Seems good on the surface, but ends up kind of getting less value than the other heroes. You want some of these higher ceiling cards, Blood Runs Deep, Wrath of Retribution, some of the Poison Blades. Those plus some flick effects is what really makes her broken and will win you, is how you get to that 3-0 pod, right? I think a lot of times just throwing 0 for 3 over and over at your opponent is not going to be enough to win the game against them when they can often throw 0 for 4s. Yeah, so that's where I would go with Cindra. We'll we'll end here with Fang. Looks like I did about 10 minutes on Cindra as well, so hopefully Fang I can keep to that. I think Fang is the easiest hero to get to work. My team put 7 people into day 2 of the calling, and I believe 6 of those people, or maybe 5, were on Fang. We had part of that is because we had practiced a lot the night before and decided that Fang was the strongest, so we maybe were a bit biased towards him. But I do think he is the easiest to make work concealed, probably where you should look first, and also the best in draft for the most part. If you watch the calling, there was only 2 Fangs in the finals draft pod, and they ended up in the finals together, and the Fang won the event. So Fang was kind of the big victor of the weekend for limited gameplay. His weapon's very strong. It's 1 to attack with for 1 damage, so kind of Cindra's weapon. But if you play a Draconic card, it gets +1 and go again. Very nice to be able to attack with it. But the really broken thing is when you have 3 fealty tokens, your daggers are free. They cost 1 less, and since they only cost 1, they're free. This is the really broken thing, and what makes him such a strong hero, I think will also probably make him very strong in CC. He cares almost more than Arachne about marking your opponent. Maybe not quite as much, but pretty close. But he definitely cares the most about fealties. You want to make fealties as quickly as possible. If you can make 3 fealties on your second turn of the game, you'll probably win. Fealties are just so broken in Fang. You really want to get on 3 and then sit there. The more you get past 3, the better. You can use them to turn extra cards Draconic. But really, you just want to rush to 3 as quickly as possible. So you want to play efficient red cards that mark your opponent or just make fealties. Those are his strongest cards, and most turns you want to at least attack with the dagger, play a Draconic card during the chain link and reactions, for example, is when you're going to do it most of the time, and then swing with your second dagger or a 0 for 4 or 1 for 5. So let's look at what you're going to mostly be looking for, which is your Draconic attack reactions. The best ones are these rares here because they'll make a fealty on the second chain link, which is very, very strong. They say target dagger attack gets +2, and if you control 2 or more Draconic chain links, create a fealty. This one is the same thing, but it costs 1 more. It costs 1, and it gives +3 instead of +2. But these both just make a unconditional fealty on the second Draconic chain link. Really, really strong. Other than that, we also have the Searing Gaze, which marks the opponent. It's a common, not a rare, so it's only marking instead of making a fealty, but still quite strong. And the 1-cost version of it is Stabbing Pain. I think the 0 cost are much, much, much better in Fang because once you have your daggers free, being 0 cost is pretty insane because you could play your whole turn without pitching a card. So I think 0 costs are the much bigger priority. They're like almost twice as strong in Fang when they're 0 cost compared to 1 cost. But it's okay to play a few 1 cost. I think, for example, Stabbing Pain and Endear Devotion are the main ones you're going to want to look for. But a few other 1 costs are okay. For example, Dynastic Dedication is usually a 1 cost if you're going to start the first dagger with it. But it can optionally be a 0 cost if it's on the second chain link. Other good ones, Blistering Blade, of course, is another good 0 cost. Imperial Intent is not bad either. Cards I would avoid, Brothers of Flame is not very good. It can only work on the second chain link, which is pretty limiting. It is +4, but compared to Dynastic, which always works and is a 1 cost for 3 on the first chain link, it's only 1 damage weaker, but at least is always active. There's a lot of hands where you literally can't play this. Sisters of Fire has a similar issue. It's a little better because it's a 0 cost, so it's not always clunky, and it's pretty good on hands once you're at 3 fealty. So you could play 1 or 2 Sisters of Fire in your deck, but I would avoid it if you can. The main upside of these cards is that they are 3 blocks, of course. But you'll usually play basically every one of these red Draconic Warrior attack reactions because they all will turn on your Obsidian Fire Vein. So you're probably going to play, I mean, you can see it starting here from Affirm Loyalty all the way to Stabbing Pain. You will, for the most part, play every one you get. The weakest are definitely Brothers of Flame, Sisters of Fire, and then Scalding Iron gets +X, where X is the number of Draconic Chain Links. So if you're using it on the first one, it's only getting +1, and at best, it usually will get just +2 on the second one. So pretty weak as well, but at least it works on the first one. So probably still a little better than Sisters of Fire and Brothers of Flame. But those are definitely the three weakest. Otherwise, you'll still probably grab any of these you can find. Outside of that, you just really care about marking your opponent and playing as efficient zero-cost cards. So your best one is probably Sworn Vengeance, 0 for +3 when it hits a hero, mark them. You're pretty happy also to play Twist and Turn for 0 for +4. Cut Deep is also a 0 for +4. Those are really good. The one costs are okay. Hunt a Killer is 1 for +4 and on hit mark. Knife Through Butter is 1 for +4, and when you attack a marked hero, it gets go again. But because they're one cost, that's a pretty huge downside. A lot of the times you are going to have 3 fealty and don't want to pitch it all that turn. I think this deck is pretty happy to run like 20 reds and 10 yellows. You don't actually need any blues in the deck, because if you're playing all 0 cost reds, which sometimes you will have that many 0 costs, you only need 2 resources for your daggers, and then you don't really need to pitch for anything else. So you're happy to grab yellows. This is probably the best yellow to grab because it's still +3. So if you are at 3 fealty, you don't need to block with this, and you can just play it for 3 value no matter what. It's pretty amazing. Similarly, the rare version, Twist and Turn, is just Cut Deep with upside because it lets your dagger attack an additional time. But those are really good. I don't think you need to care that much about blues in the deck unless you end up with a bunch of one cost. If you're at like, I think the best rule of thumb is you probably want 1 blue per 1 cost. So if you have 3 1 costs in your deck, you want 3 blues, and then you can have like 7 yellows, and you want like about 10 resource cards. Other cards that are really good, looking in the Draconic area, his best reaction is actually not a warrior one, it's just the Tooth of the Dragon. This gives your next Draconic attack +3. A lot of times opponents will make mistakes and block pretty hard on the first dagger because they expect you to pump it with a big reaction. You can kind of juke them out with Tooth of the Dragon. Play this, your dagger will just go to 2 go again, but then your next dagger now attacks for 4. Really, really strong card. Slightly weaker version of it is Rake Over the Coals. It's kind of 0 for +2, but still not bad. Those are probably the best 2 here for it. Drop of Dragon Blood is not horrible either, but it is a rare. Your best rare that you can find is probably Hunt to the Ends of Wraith. Even if it's just 0 for 2 with Go Again, it's not bad because it becomes your Draconic Chain Link. But if it's attacking Arachne, it marks them right away, which is amazing. And if it's attacking any marked hero, it gets +2, so it's 0 for 4 Go Again. To explain why it's so good, similarly, this Majestic Oath of Loyalty is broken in the deck. If you can make your first Draconic Chain Link an attack action Draconic, then all of your second Chain Link stuff gets turned on right away on the first dagger. So you attack with Hunt to the Ends of Wraith, then attack with your first dagger. This will immediately get to make you a fealty token because you're already on your second Draconic Chain Link. March of Loyalty is much harder to turn on because you have to make a fealty. It only really works if they're marked and they let you hit them, and they won't often let you do that. Blaze Headlong can be your first chain link if you first played a non-attack action buff. This only gets go again if you played another red card. I would still pick all of these you can find, but it's best if you can play a non-attack like this first, count giving your first dagger +4, and then plays Blaze Headlong and then attack with your dagger. So still good. Most of these attack actions at red are going to be really good in Fang, and you want to mark your opponent as much as you can. So Smoke Out is really good when it defends a red card mark, and Hunt the Hunter is pretty nice as well when this attacks a hero. If you played another red card this turn, mark them. You don't want that many 1 costs, but this one's not bad because it does 3 blocks still. And sometimes if you are pitching a yellow, let's say your hand is a yellow and a 0 cost react, if you just go pitch the yellow to attack with the dagger, play the 0 cost react, so now the dagger is 4 go again. The other resource is usually just going to be attacking for 1, so you're just getting 1 damage out of that resource on the other dagger. So it's totally fine if you choose to not attack with the second dagger and instead throw a 1 cost attack. So Hunt the Hunter is probably the best one to do there. For the Emperor is also pretty good as the 1 cost attack. When this attacks a marked hero, create a fealty token. So pretty amazing to rush fealties with this, but you do have to time it right because you need to mark them first. I would watch out for Pledge Fealty and Proclaim Vengeance. I think Pledge Fealty can be quite good because it lets you get to 3 fealty really quickly, but it doesn't actually do any damage or block. so you don't want a lot of these in your deck. Proclaim Vengeance is even weaker because it's only marking. It does give you a resource of the opponent's Arachne, but I think these are pretty low picks and not super necessary. If you're looking for a few more cards for your deck, they're not bad, but I would probably try to avoid them just because you don't want that many no blocks in your deck. You just want like 2 or 3 if you can help it. But Pledge Fealty, I have ran once or twice. I think I had one in the deck I went 7-1 with, and I did like it quite a lot. It helped a lot of hands. So it's not a bad card. You just don't want a lot of it. I think this is probably the worst Draconic card. It doesn't count as a chain link. It doesn't work until next turn. It only 2 blocks. I'd probably avoid Blessing of Vincerikai at all costs. Like, this card's quite bad. So don't really want to play it if you can help it. Otherwise, I think every other Draconic card has a place in the decks at some point. You can probably play any of these Draconic cards in both Cindra and Fang, but Blessing is the worst, and Pledge Fealty and Reclaim Vengeance are usually not good enough, but you can play these if you need to. Otherwise, most of the Assassin Warrior cards are pretty great. Scar Tissue is the best because it gives a dagger +3 and on-hit mark. And once again, we're really trying to get to 3 fealty as quickly as possible. Cut from the same cloth is amazing as well. A lot of times it'll unconditionally mark the opponent if they reveal an attack reaction. And at the very least, you get to see their hand for information and give your next dagger +4. So Fang is very strong. You want to rush to those 3 fealties, and you then will usually win the game if you have a decent enough life buffer still, because you can kind of just block with 2 cards if you want to, if you need to, and then attack with your dagger for free, react, attack with the dagger for free, react, and that's why 0 costs are so good in the deck. I hope that is a good rundown. I know it's not a highly edited video. I don't usually do those, so I don't have the cool PowerPoint going with all the cards showing off. But we're just scrolling through the February spoiler page, kind of talking about the heroes. I do think Fang has the best floor, so he's the easiest to make work. I think Cindra maybe has the highest ceiling if you can do some insane turns with Poison Blade, and then giving your daggers a bunch of extra damage. This card can do some really insane stuff. So Cindra has a high ceiling, and then Arachne is just pretty good. He's maybe in the middle of the two. He can do some really strong things, but isn't always the best hero. It depends a lot on your pool. If you don't have a lot of good red stealth cards, he's not really going to work, right? So if you have like 2 red stealth cards, he's not going to work at all. You need some of those stronger red stealth cards I talked about at the beginning of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment below how your pre-release went, if this video helped you at all, or if you disagree with anything in the video. Let me know in the comments as well. I'd love to have some discussions about Flesh and Blood. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you next time.